Live from Kakariko Village. Broadcast throughout the Retroverse, transmitted to the real world via a maze of wires connecting a Super Nintendo to a Wii, to a Wi-Fi network, and finally to the Internet. The Techno Funk Boy presents the Retro Zoo Super Show. Now here are your hosts, Kai and Steven.
You have found your way over to the Retro Zoo Super Show, and this is the 2017 Winter Jam. So this is the last episode of the year, which should be, overly surprising because, next year is like, three days from now, as far as, the day that this episode is uploaded. And, I know that, a lot of us will be listening, actually in 2018, but there's no problem with that at all because this is not some rundown of the top hits of today or anything like that. This is definitely the top hits of yesteryear, and that is what this show is about. We are not on the cutting edge of pretty much anything, but we do enjoy a certain grouping of games that the world has deemed to be retro, and that is where our heart lies, and that is what we enjoy doing with our spare time, and so we shall continue to do so. I am Kai, and I am all by myself here in the studio. You may remember last week that people were really kind of clearing out around here for Christmas break, and both Stephen and Lady Morel had taken their leave for the year. Now both Anla and Drum have also done so. Drum doesn't really necessarily get a break, but someone as a prank gave him a container of peanut butter for Christmas, and somehow convinced him that this was, specially formulated robot juice, I think was the phrase bandied around. And long story short, the swivel that his, dome head was on is now stuck, and he is currently being repaired. And so I'm here all by myself, alone in the studio, and I don't know, it just seemed to get weird when I'm here, and that may be reflected in my current mood, but I'm thinking about endings. I'm thinking about, the closing of chapters, the completion of tales, which is only natural being a few days away from the new year. But until we reach then, I wanted to take a closer look at how we wrap things up, so to speak. if you have not joined us for one of our seasonal jams before, what we do here is we take a theme of some sort and I talk less and play more music. And so the theme for today is going to be ending themes. These are the themes that's normally playing when the credits roll of our favorite old video games. And, that take us out when that moment when we've set the controller down and we're leaning back in our chair and we're looking at the TV. We don't want to turn it off because we've accomplished something and we want to soak it in. And this is the music that plays while we do that very soaking. And so I have a number of selections, and I'm actually trying to get away from specifically games that I've played to try to broaden my horizons a little bit. Now, now certainly a lot of these games I have played, and a lot of these games I actually have beaten and heard this tune for the first hand at the completion of a game, but several of them I have not. And so listening to the soundtracks is actually one of my first exposures to these particular games, and the first one is one of those games. And even though it was an NES game and that was my console of choice back in my younger years, I did not play the NES game Batman. And so we have a short little piece here that I'm kind of excited about. Seeing how this is a series of ending themes, we are going to a lot of these are just really chill. All the work is done. There's not a lot of excitement anymore. The action is all wrapped up, and so these are just kind of more mellow, more triumphant. That we've defeated the bad guy, we've saved whoever, and now we're ready to go on our way. Some of them are downright sentimental. This one is going to start off with more of a driving rock beat that kind of ties it to the game that came before, but it's quickly going to die down a little bit and let us settle in and enjoy our victory. And we are going to listen to it right now. So our next one is probably actually the most upbeat tune that we have today, with the exception of perhaps our show closer that is coming up. But this one is definitely one that will just kind of get you bobbing your head up and down a little bit, just enjoying the groove. It's not quite as driving or intense as the start of the Batman tune was, but it definitely is one designed to lift the spirits a little bit. We're not getting into the slow, sentimental groove quite yet. We will get there. Believe me, we will get there. I'm not going to have our winter jam be filled with rock and roll and, songs that are really driving up the intensity and such. This is the season where we kind of chill a little bit. And so we've started on our high, but we're going to drift downwards and kind of enjoy ourselves from here on out. But along the way, this, as I said, this was a very fun and playful tune. from the end of Adventure Island 2. This is also one that I never played. I played a little bit of Adventure Island, but not a whole lot. This was not one that I really ran across. I certainly knew about it, but never really got to play it. And so, hearing this song, this was a lot of fun, and certainly, as the Mario games showed us, the Nintendo sound system actually worked really well with this kind of bouncing melody, the kind of playfulness that the tropical themes and such that we're going to get here. And so this is one of those things that the NES system actually did really, really well when it came to sound, as limited as it was. So we're going to jump right in to this one, Adventure Island 2 ending theme. All right, so this next soundtrack is actually from a game that I recently watched a speed run of the NES game Willow, and I was most impressed by it. And so I've actually looked into the game a little bit, and at least enough to know that this is something that I really want to try my hand at. And so Willow is definitely on the list of games that I want to dive into, and it looks like it's actually pretty well put together, and seems to be a lot of fun, at least from what I've seen. Having never played it, perhaps my judgment is not the best, but the ending theme is I thought it was very interesting. So there's a lot of it that reminds me of like a Uematsu track from Final Fantasy that's very distinguished and very epic feeling, and you feel like you're part of this giant plot and this huge world altering story, and you are this instrumental part of what is going on, and so there's a lot of it that feels like that. But then there's also this element to the song that is trying to drive it forward with a heavier beat, even though we're not using the soundtrack channel for percussion or drums. In this case, we are using some of the secondary voices to provide a rhythm to kind of drive the song forward. And so I thought it was kind of a cool mix of what I might expect from like a really epic fantasy RPG, JRPG type of a story, like a Final Fantasy, while also containing the elements of more of an action game that you might see more of in like a Mega Man. And so I thought it was very clever, the way that this whole thing came out. The ending theme is very interesting and goes through several phases, and very worthwhile, and it's actually just kind of making me more and more interested in playing this game. And so, without further ado, here's the ending theme from the NES game Willow. Okay, now jump over into Little Double Dragon 2. I played a little bit of this game. I did not reach the end by myself. I have not heard this song legitimately, so to speak, but I ran across it in researching for this episode. And so this is a lot slower and a lot more sentimental than I would have expected from a game like Double Dragon 2. But at the same time, you have conquered the game, you have reached your goal, and this is one of, video gaming trope that you have the ending sentimental song that you have. It's kind of your reward for conquering, as it were, and so this is what we get from this particular soundtrack, and I thought it was really interesting. And so let's give it a listen. This is the ending theme from Double Dragon 2. Okay, one more before we leave the NES, and this is from my favorite NES soundtrack, and it is one of my favorite ending themes of all time. It's from Mega Man 3. All right, so one thing that's really cool about this is you have the Proto Man or the Break Man theme that pops up first. I'm actually gonna explain the way that musically we're storytelling here, because Mega Man 3 is kind of more or less the first Mega Man with a halfway decent on-screen plot. I mean, there's always been this background information that's really cool in Mega Man, and Mega Man 2 has this nice, kind of wily fake out that at the end, but not a lot of plot happens on screen in Mega Man. But in Mega Man 3 they introduced this character, Break Man or Proto Man, or as he is called in the original, Blues. And this robot character appears in several places in the game to kind of challenge you, and you don't actually you don't blow him up. All right, when you defeat him, he retreats, and then the way opens for you to move forward. And the whole game, you're kind of wondering who this thing is, and spoilers for those who are very concerned with the plot of a Mega Man game from what was the 80s. Proto Man is actually your brother that had been built by Dr. Light, and who in the end of the game actually saves you. Now, in the original, and this is one of the things that we lose in translation, because the traditional Mega Man soundtrack is filled with these great rock tunes, and in the Japanese version of the game, he's called Rockman, and that's a stupid title. It's dumb. But and by the way, it is so nice to be able to talk about Mega Man without drumming. That's a aside. Okay, so Rockman is a stupid title, and it does not at all work in English. But the reason he's called Rockman is he's rock and his sister is roll, and Proto Man is blues. And every time Proto Man appears, you get this kind of bluesy whistle thing going. And at the end of the game, when he saves you, this is the theme that pops up when you realize who it was that saved you and why he saved you. And so this is the moment where the soundtrack goes from more of a rock soundtrack to more of a blues soundtrack. And in the English, that's totally lost on us. I mean, we don't, that make the musical punning there is completely lost on us. But when you learn kind of the Japanese origins of these names, you understand what they're doing here, and it's very cool. And this song is very cool, and I like it a lot. And we're going to dive right into it and listen to some Mega Man 3. Okay, we are going to scoot over to the Genesis for just a moment here to talk a little Castlevania Bloodlines. Now, this is a game, another one of those games I've never played. I never had a Genesis. I have not played the Castlevania games that were in that line of things, and so this is one that I have seen speedrun. I've seen a bit of Let's Play on it, but I've never played it myself. Now, one thing I really like about it, from what I could see, is the soundtrack. And we spent 2 episodes on Michiru Yamane's incredible Symphony of the Night soundtrack. And she also composed the music for Bloodlines. And so while I don't like the Bloodlines soundtrack quite as much, it is still very, very cool. And Yamane is just an incredible talent that I like very much. This song is very interesting to me because it's when the way it starts off, and I want you to listen for this. The way it starts off, you're going to have the organ sound that we're so familiar with on, in general, vampire stories. And we went into a little bit of this on the Symphony of the Night soundtrack. But when we think of vampires, very often we'll think about Dracula playing Bach on an organ, and Yamane very skillfully uses organs throughout her soundtracks to kind of evoke that memory, that association, to remind us of what kind of story we're dealing with. But this the song itself is not kind of the dark minor key vampire horror kind of a tune that we would expect during the game itself. This is the end. This is we've succeeded. We won. Yay! And so she's moving the organ into a much more upbeat tune, a much happier tune, a much more sentimental tune, and that organ actually then gives away to the other instruments of the song to take over as the song progresses. And so it's very cool what she does here. And this was I thought this was a really neat ending theme, and wanted to play a little bit of it for you right here. right, over to a game that I'm very, very, very familiar with, Secret of Mana. I absolutely adored this game. It's really funny. Two of my favorite games for the Super Nintendo was, first of all, Chrono Trigger, which is my favorite game of all time. But also in probably my top 5 on the Super Nintendo was Secret of Mana, and both of them were published by Square. Both have incredibly good soundtracks, but they're very, very different games. And Secret of Mana, we're gonna have to do an episode of Secret of Mana because it essentially is an unfinished game. That the short version of it is that Nintendo was promising a CD-ROM add-on to the Super Nintendo, and so the game was being developed with that in mind, that there would be that much excess memory for Square to use for this game. And when it was finally realized that's not going to happen, Square kind of put together what they could. And what they got is essentially an unfinished game. There are just very clearly places in the game where you're walking by and like, there really should have been some sort of dungeon around here, but there's not. And there's it's also a very buggy game and a very glitchy game where you can do a lot of stuff that you really should not be able to do. Meanwhile, Chrono Trigger is a very refined game and not very buggy or glitchy at all. There are some bugs in it and some glitches that you can exploit, especially if you're speedrunning, but not really that many in comparison. But Secret of Mana is one of my favorites. So what you're going to get in this song, I really like the way this song is structured, because you're going to start off with a string section with the strings playing by themselves, this tune that we would expect at the end of a video game, but that will move into the next portion of the song, in which the strings back off. And what you end up with is like bells and flutes providing the melody and moving the song along. And it's much more playful and much more upbeat and lighthearted. And that's one of the things that about Secret of Mana is so much of the game is very lighthearted and very, very simple and innocent and playful. And so it's just so appropriate. You kind of get to the end, and so you're expecting those strings to kind of just belt out this kind of epic tale of a song, and you're getting that, but then it goes, wait a minute, this isn't Final Fantasy. This is Secret of Mana. Let's have some fun. And so it doesn't lose that epic feel at all, but what you end up with is something that is a little bit lighter, and I love it. So Secret of Mana, ending theme right here. All right, just a few more left, and we're going over to another game that I haven't played, and this is going to surprise you because this was a big one. But Metal Gear Solid, I never played it. I gotta say, I'm kind of fascinated by the Metal Gear series. I very much enjoy watching people play them and hearing the plots and about the characters of the games, but I've never played any of them. And so, I don't know. It's just something that I've never quite gotten to, and I probably will, very possibly in the near future. But in the meantime, I ran across this ending theme, and for those who don't remember, it's like really kind of in the PlayStation era, we started getting these ending themes with actual songs attached, and these especially on the soundtracks, these would end up kind of acting like as the single for the soundtrack that so very often didn't sound anything like the rest of the soundtrack. Some of the better composers like Uematsu were able to really tie these songs into the story instead of just having them sitting out there in the middle of the credits. But this particular one, which is called The Best Is Yet to Come, I thought was really cool. It starts off with just kind of this solo choir, and that provides an introduction to much more of a I would say, kind of a new agey type of a sound, acoustic guitar, violin. It definitely has a little bit of an Irish feel to it. Very, it reminds me a lot of like Lorena McKenna or like an Enya. And I really like it. I can imagine myself, kind of at the end of the game, just kind of sitting back and enjoying this after having finally conquered, my objective. And so, here we go. The best is yet to come from Metal Gear Solid. Okay, this is our final one, and we're going to take a step back, and this is a theme from an NES game, in particular Final Fantasy IV, of course, released here in the United States originally as Final Fantasy II. This is the ending theme from that game, that easily has one of the best soundtracks ever made. This is where Uematsu particularly was really at his prime. I would say that his three SNES soundtracks for the Final Fantasy series were probably the best that he did. And, Final Fantasy II, it really holds a special place in my heart, especially the soundtrack. And so that's what we're going to go to, but we're not going to go to the original. We are going to, play the version of this that, the Techno Funk Boy recorded many years ago, as part of our Final Fantasy Mixes disc, which is available on Spotify, on Amazon, on iTunes, all that good jazz. But we want to play for you the ending theme from Final Fantasy IV, for your enjoyment here. This is our version, and hopefully it takes you out with a smile. So that's it for me this week and for this year. We will catch you again next week, which is also next year. And, we have a lot of fun already in store for next year. I'm really excited about where we're going from here. And I think you're gonna continue to be, pleased and engaged with the show. So, all right. So first of all, how do you find us? So, to get the show notes for this episode, what you want to do is you want to go to technofunkboy.com/winter 2017. Winter 2017. Now this is going to have links to all the songs that we were listening to, more information on them, including composers and all that good jazz. Please check it out. Please sign up for our newsletter there. We are this very week, as the band comes back together, we are going into the studio to record some new music, and that will be available free to our newsletter subscribers. And so please do sign up for our newsletter there. And that way you will be ready when that music is announced and released. But we appreciate you. Find us on Facebook, find us on Twitter, find us on Instagram, all that good jazz. Please like and follow us there. And please enjoy this piece by us Techno Funk Boy from Final Fantasy IV. Talk to you later, and Happy New Year.